Michelle Dodds with the Historic Preservation Office, City of Phoenix. I'd like to welcome everyone to our first presentation of 3 regarding our ethnic heritage story maps. We'll start, I just want to remind everyone that if you have a question, please enter that question into the chat box. And we have 2 presenters today, Crystal Carancho and Mara Jackson, who will be taking turns doing the presentation. And I hope you enjoy it. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Crystal first.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on your lunch break today. Just to give some background to these story maps, Mara and I will be showing you one of the 3 ethnic heritage story maps that we created for the HP office. In the 2000s, the City of Phoenix hired some consultants to conduct ethnic heritage surveys for properties within the City of Phoenix. This resulted in 3 historic property reports, one for African American heritage, one for Asian American heritage, and another for Hispanic heritage. And so the results of those surveys were published and made available online. There's so much information and so many wonderful properties within the city. So the HP office really wanted to do more and bring more attention to the information in the reports and place some people involved. And they determined that the story map would be a really wonderful way to present this information and present it in a way that's very media focused and interactive for users, and which in the current situation has been really a relevant way to use this information and share it online for everyone so they can take a tour of the city from their computer. Today we'll be showing you the African American Heritage Story. So this is our webpage for the story maps. It's a Phoenix.gov /PDD/story-maps. And you can see there's an introduction from Mayor Gallego. And if you scroll down, there's all 3 story maps. We will be having presentations for the other 2. And so there's also some videos that I highly encourage everyone to check out. They're really videos with a lot of information, a lot of interviews and other people speaking. We'll go ahead and open the African American Heritage Story Map, and Mara will lead this off with some information as soon as it loads.
Yeah. That's another thing. Sometimes these are a little image heavy, so you just have to be patient. Okay. So here, if we want to scroll down a little bit, so that bar right there are tabs. So if you want to hop to specific sections, you can do so. This blue text at the top is some directions. So you guys who may not be familiar with story maps can get the most out of it. You can click on a lot of things to expand it and send it back. You can zoom in on the maps and that kind of thing. At the beginning of each story map, we have a map that has all of the points of the properties that will be discussed further on in the story map. Yeah, so you can click on them and get a short summary. You can also zoom in and more labels will pop up. This is a good way to orient you guys so you can see kind of where the points are and get a sense of how they're interspersed throughout the city. And like where the neighborhoods are concentrated. And so something that I'd like to point out is that top point, that top, is the Lincoln Ragsdale home. This property is significant for its association with Lincoln Ragsdale, which he is highlighted within our story map later on. He made significant contributions to the community. And in addition to this being his personal home, it's also the first home to be owned by an African American, typically north of the city above that concentrated area where the African American communities were typically concentrated. and his ownership of them challenged what was acceptable at that time.
So let me exit out of this now. First off, we're going to talk about education. So as Mara mentioned, segregation and where people could live. Schools in Phoenix were also segregated at one time. Just scrolling through, in March of 1909, the territorial legislature passed a proposal to segregate schools when school districts deemed it necessary. Governor Joseph Kibbe vetoed the law as he felt it was unfair to give African American students a, quote, less effective, less complete, less convenient, or less pleasant, end quote, education than that of white students. So just scrolling through some of the segregated schools, and we'll keep scrolling. So I wanted to get to this point. This is a block quote taken from the oral histories that were taken during this original inventory for the report. In the future, we hope to actually upload some of the audio of these oral histories. So just wanted to show you some of the quotes. We have these throughout the story map, and Mara did a really great job showing them with this really nice graphic. But I will continue scrolling down. So we have a little block about Juneteenth. We go into this a little more within the social community aspect, but just keep scrolling. There's educators, various administrators within the role of education. And so I wanted to get to this part. And so the law at the time stated that 25 or more African American students enrolled to a high school. If there were that many, that 15% of the district residents had the power to call an election to segregate Black and white students. So in 1914, the Phoenix Union High School District voted to segregate the high school population. African American students had been attending school in the basement at Phoenix Union High School at the time. So after this law was passed in 1923, they moved to a 2-room cottage at 9th and Jefferson Streets. By 1926, there were 80 students attending classes in a house near 8th and Jefferson Streets. And so finally in 1926, the district finally constructed the Phoenix Union Colored High School at 415 East Grand Street. And it was basically located on a former landfill. So the parents protested the location of the school as it was just a really undesirable location, and it forced their children to cross the railroad tracks just to go to school. So we have this featured here. You can see the map. The first principal at this high school is Roy Lee. He was the first African American administrator of this rank in Phoenix. 2 years later, W.A. Robinson became the next principal. He really pushed to reorganize the school and attempted to recruit some of the best teachers from across the country to teach at this school. So he made a lot of improvements, pushed for supplies, again, pursued teachers with master's degrees. Some of those teachers were Arlena Seneca, Betty Fairfax, and we have Bessie Wilson here in this photo. I'll expand quickly. So there was a lot of effort put into making sure that students at the school had the best education. It also had an excellent sports program. Like, let me scroll down. So one story, in 1948, the men's basketball team won the state championship in a stunning upset of perennial powerhouse schools like Phoenix Union. So as a result, the very next year, the district officials ended up restructuring the school divisions and placing Carver among the B schools, which put them against rural areas. So they had a really strong athletic teams. And so you can see these trophies that are on display at the Carver Museum and Cultural Center. Throughout our story maps, we have some preservation successes. And so we have the Carver Museum and Cultural Center as one of those. I I skipped a bit, but in 1943, high school was renamed to the George Washington Carver High School. So today, after segregation ended following a landmark case in which 3 Carver students challenged the Phoenix Union High School District's policy of segregation, the kids were then sent to other schools, primarily Phoenix Union High School, which integrated them with the Hispanic community more. The building itself was used as offices for a short time after. In 1996, the Phoenix Monarchs Alumni Association purchased the facility from the Phoenix Union High School District for $200,000, and they established the George Washington Carver Museum and Cultural Center. The building is listed on both the Phoenix Historic Property Register and the National Register of Historic Places, and in 2017, the building was designated as a landmark on the Phoenix Register. And so currently the building is undergoing restoration and renovation. They plan to use the space for exhibits and training and teaching opportunities, among other events. There's a small museum about the history of the school. There's also a library dedicated to Carver librarian Gwendolyn M. Smith, who served from 1946 to its closing in 1954. She was the first Black librarian with a master's degree in Arizona, again speaking to the education that Carver tried to provide to its students despite the fact of it being a segregated school. So again, just scrolling through former principal W.A. Robinson, there's a lot of different educators' homes. Eugene Grigsby taught at the school. He also taught at ASU. So I will skip down to housing and development and talk a little bit about some of those properties. So first on my list is Matthew Henson, which I can't speak about and without talking about the Phoenix Housing Authority first. The Phoenix Housing Authority was created in April 1939 with the passage of the Arizona Municipal Housing Act. The Phoenix Housing Authority petitioned the United States Housing Authority for federal funds for public housing and received a positive recommendation for the city to file a formal application. So in October of 1939, a federal grant of $1.6 million was approved to build 3 racially segregated housing projects. Named after the African-American Arctic explorer, Matthew Henson was one of those 3 racially segregated complexes. And the other 2 being the Frank Luke Project, which was primarily Anglo-Americans, and the Marcus de Niza Project, which was for Hispanic or Mexican Americans specifically. And so here you see a photo. Groundbreaking began in 1940 for the Matthew Henson Public Housing Project. And by 1941, 132 families moved into the units. I will keep scrolling down to some of the newer photos we have. So this is the Phoenix Housing Authority buildings. Here's some other black and white images. And so in 2001, the City of Phoenix received a $35 million grant from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to revitalize the housing project called the Henson Village. The initial phase of the project was completed in 2006 and included 198 rental units, 129 active senior apartments, an over 8,000 square foot Burnell Coleman Youth Center, an over 8,000 square foot community training and education center, and the Matthew Henson Public Park. Here you can see they did preserve a courtyard of the original housing units as part of this project. And I will keep scrolling down. As mentioned, Burnell Coleman Youth Center at the Henson Village, she was a community leader and activist that lives in Matthew Henson, and she made a push for improved living conditions for the community. So we do have a slideshow with some information about her and her role and some of the others that lived within that community as well. To keep scrolling down, I will touch on Progressive Builders Association. Being continuously denied loans and kept away from Anglo homeowners, African American developers created a cooperative that would help build homes for other Black Americans. Many veterans were returning from World War II and were not able to buy a house through the GI Bill or under the FHA in white neighborhoods. So, in 1945, members of the community met at the First Institutional Baptist Church and formed the Progressive Builders Association. B.W. Williams served as the president of this organization that lined up investors for purchasing and subdividing land that would be used to build new homes for African Americans. They also assisted in making sure the homes were constructed per federal standards so they could qualify for the VA and FHA financing. The PBA purchased 160 acres from Kemper Marley, located between 20th and 24th Streets. And I will scroll down. This is the office of some of the other businesses and partnerships that overlap with PBA, which include the Sun Valley Trust and Management, Jones Realty, and I will keep scrolling. So PBA purchased this land and they sold it to Williams and Jones Contracting, who constructed small ranch-style brick houses, and they call this subdivision the East Broadway Edition. And this gave many African Americans the opportunity to own their first brand new home. So here's some of the advertisements you can see. Continuing scrolling down, there's an aerial from 1949 showing sort of the beginning of construction within that subdivision. Carlotta Place is another adjacent to the East Broadway Edition. So in December of 1946, longtime dentist Dr. Robert Phillips and his wife Louise created this subdivision. So here's just some really neat historic advertisements. This is the home of Robert and Louise Phillips, which is also listed. And so just scrolling through, there's so much more information. Again, this is to draw attention also to the reports, but next up we'll look at some of the social community aspects.
Yeah, so a large part of the African American heritage here in Phoenix is centered on the community, on the sensitive community and historically African American neighborhoods. And some of these neighborhoods include recreational spaces such as Eastlake Park. It's one of the largest and most significant in this regard. Eastlake Park has a long history of being and continues to be a gathering place for the African American community. Historically, several Juneteenth events were held here, and many events during the Civil Rights Movement were held here as well. Fun stuff like that. The park is designated as a historic landmark on the Phoenix Historic Properties Register. Landmark designation is a step higher than just regular historic designation, and it's reserved for properties that have exceptionally outstanding significance. So this park has been recognized with that exceptional significance here in Phoenix. Another preservation success is the bandstand, which is located at Eastlake Park. It was restored in 2012 to facilitate events and activities and help keep this space vibrant. It's been named the Georgie and Calvin Goods Bandshell in honor of their service to the Phoenix community. And in addition to the bandstand and other contemporary park structures, there's a civil rights monument here that was constructed in 1997. This was a project that resulted from the Percent for Art program that's currently overseen by the city's Office of Arts and Culture. This monument celebrates the exceptional historic significance that Eastlake Park and the role that it played in the national civil rights movement. And so that's really special and unique there. Then churches are another property type that were and continue to be a significant part of Phoenix's African American community. In particular, Tanner Chapel AME Church it's also a landmark on the Phoenix Historic Property Register. So the building itself has architectural significance. It's an impressive Norman and Gothic Revival style building, and it was constructed in 1929, excuse me. Members of this congregation were active in the community as educators, businessmen, activists, and political leaders. The influence of this church reached far beyond its immediate neighborhood. The congregation ministered to the community and pushed for social change. During the civil rights struggles of the mid-20th century, Tanner Chapel provided a place to meet and organize protests and hear speeches. The members gave financial aid to the civil rights movement and provided places for leadership training as well. Often members of this congregation served as officers in the NAACP, the Urban League, and other political organizations. Additionally, in 1964, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. visited the church to discuss civil rights in Phoenix. This church is connected with that larger context of a lot of churches nationally that served in that capacity. Okay, and so we have a lot of other different kind of sites and properties throughout the story map. So we hope that you guys can take a minute and look through them on your own, and we hope that this piqued your interest and you found out something maybe you didn't know about before, or learned something about this topic. And I think Crystal also mentioned we're looking to add updates. We're hoping to add some of the audio from the oral histories that were done with the surveys, as well as some other videos and different things like that. So yeah, and so you guys can also refer back to the original survey here. That's got a lot of good information in it as well. Yeah, so Crystal, I don't know if you have anything else to add, but I guess we can take questions now.
Yeah, I don't have anything to add. Just highly encourage everyone to explore. We'll link this in the chat. We'll link the main website in the chat as well, so everyone can explore further. And again, the survey reports are linked on all of these story maps, and there's so much more information about the history and properties in Phoenix. So we highly recommend everyone take a look at those as well. So we're going to take questions at this point. I have to look in the chat. I don't see questions.
I don't see any questions.
I do see a comment from someone about the fact that the school is on a landfill. I mean, I guess that's something we could include. I think at the time we were just putting this, there is so much more information in the reports that we did not get to include in our story map. And by story map standards, this is kind of a long story map. That's why we use the navigation tabs. So there's so much more information, but yeah, we're definitely open to feedback and any comments or information people would like to share with us so we can make this better, as well as updating it with new information. I see who handled the aspect of GIS. I did most of the GIS with support from our GIS team. They helped with like uploading my layers and things to like the enterprise website, so I'd be able to access them in story maps. And then as far as the story map itself, Mara and I worked on building it together. We just started, and we will go into showing you a bit about the story maps, but I don't know, Mara, do you have anything you want to say about like the outlining and things like that?
Yeah, so we were lucky enough to already have the information together in the survey. So I think we did kind of reorganize it a little bit. This one's organized kind of thematically. Some of our other ones are organized a little bit differently. So we did do an outline, and with some of the updates to the story map website or account and things, it is a little bit easier to kind of move things around. But yeah, organizing it, I think I had a bit of a learning curve. This is the first time that I had used, made a story map before.
But again, we'll go through. Yeah, we'll go through the process and show people. It's not as scary. I think it was kind of intuitive to use it, and just seeing what worked. There's trial and error, and we definitely learned as we worked through each story map what we could do more, what we could do a little differently. So, but yeah, we both built this all together and took turns switching story maps as we needed to work on other things. And then our supervisors, obviously the staff in the Historic Preservation Office, helped with the editing and making sure that everything was very cohesive and presented the best way for users. Looking at the questions, let's see, from Keith, I think this is a very educational presentation. Do you have any intentions of providing this to school teachers or classrooms? I'll just say this is a public document. Anyone can look at this. We highly encourage you share this with anyone you know that might be interested in looking at it. The idea, and especially the purpose of this presentation, is to expand sort of the viewership and those interacting with the story map. So if people want to use this for educational purposes, they are more than welcome to. And going back to the survey report attached at the end, someone else asked, are there paper copies available of the survey? I think you might be able to print a copy, but again, the survey report, this is all based off of that report. So if that is linked on our website and linked at the end of this story map, and you can make a copy of that as well.
Something I want to add to about the educational use. That's something that we're hoping to add with future updates and things. I don't know when we'll get to it, but we are hoping to kind of maybe put some activities or something in there that will be useful for students. We haven't gotten to it yet, but that is something we're looking into.
And I'm not sure how many audio interviews there are. Mara, do you recall? That's one of the questions. How many audio interviews are there?
Actually,
roughly?
There are. I think there are about maybe 5. There's a group interview from the Elk Lodge, and then there are a couple. Let me see. There's one with Travis Williams, who I think his house is specifically featured in our story map, and then there are some other interviews with some others as well.
Yeah, so the interviews were conducted by the consultant, which is, let me go back to the conclusions, Athenaeum. I'm trying to make sure. Yeah, so the leads on this project conducted the interviews, and I hope that answers the question. I don't have much more to provide on that, but these were done back in 2004, so it has been a while ago, but there was a lot of public outreach and community involvement at the time with creating this original report and gathering all of this information. Again, do we plan to gather stories from residents to integrate in the story map. We welcome any information or stories that people may have. It's our intention to treat it as a living document and keep building off of it, keep adding and updating it as much as we can. I'm just scrolling through the questions. I don't know if you see any, Mara, that you might call out. Let's see.
Crystal, if you could jump down to East Lake Park on there, I do see a question that asks when it was established. So 1889. And then someone asked to share the website link, which I'm not sure if it's been shared in the chat yet, but we will be sure to share all these links with you guys.
Yeah, so I've gone ahead and just put this main website link. That way you can access all 3 story maps and all of the videos as well. So is George Washington Carver Museum the only building of the Phoenix High School you left? The actual Phoenix Union High School is a building left, but as far as the George Washington Carver Museum, for the most part, the campus buildings are all there. I think there's future plans to restore the. Of course, I want to talk about something I can't remember the word for. What is it? The stand at the.
The amphitheater?
Yes. They plan to restore that. So a lot of those buildings, they're still there, and it's in progress, but they're doing a good job, and they were such a helpful resource for this story map in particular, providing permissions to use a lot of the photos in here, and some that we hadn't seen before. So, is it possible to include a clickable historic film footage? Yes. I think that's our intention. Do we have a video in this one in particular? I don't think we do, right?
Not that I can recall. I know there are some things, that we have in mind to add. It's just, something we're working on.
Yes, and same thing to those who want to listen to the audio interviews. We're working on figuring out how to convert the audio and upload it. How are we planning to promote this information outside the city? And are we working with the PIO to share on the newsroom or social media? So Angie Holdsworth actually got these videos together and finished the production. And so again, highly encourage everyone to look at these. She helped us get this website together. So we're definitely trying to promote this more. And that's, again, this brown bag session will hopefully help do that. And you all participating today can help spread the word. I don't know how many more questions they're going to take. Is there a cutoff time? Anyone?
I believe that Crystal's email was in the flyer for this as well, so you can always email us if you guys have questions that we didn't get to.
Oh yes, I don't have that.
Crystal and Mara, were you going to share how someone might create their own story map?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll end with questions now, but again, I'll put a slide up at the end that shows the email so you can contact all of us with more information or questions. But as Michelle mentioned, we are going to look at making our own story map. So first off, we're going to start with this Esri Story Maps Gallery. So for those that aren't familiar, we had our story maps. They're very narrative driven, but there's so many other types of story maps. Some are more data driven, but I'll let Mara talk about that a little bit.
Okay, yeah, so there are a lot of a lot of different ways that you can use the, make a story map on different things. They are typically map based, but you can make them image based or, on other things. As you can see, there are a lot of different examples. You can use them for work projects like we did, or you can use them for like a personal project. Like there are some that document people's vacations and things like that. And there's a lot of new features now that they have updated since we started making ours. So there's a lot of ways you can customize it and distinguish your story map. So to begin with, you'll need to make an account, and I think Crystal can show you guys a little bit of how, like where you need to go. But yeah, that gallery that she showed is a great way to get started, some inspiration. And so there's a bunch of different media and stuff that you can put in.
So to start, you do need to make an ArcGIS online account. If you're doing this for city projects, you work with the GIS team to access an account. They'll probably create one within the city enterprise system. And so you'll sign into your ArcGIS online account. If you want to do this for just like personal use, you can create an ArcGIS online account for free. You can use story maps for free, but there's just limitations. There's certain features you can't use without a subscription. But I have my ArcGIS online account open, and I've gone ahead and just opened up my story maps. So I have the ones that we worked on here, but we will start a new story. And there's some different setups. There's a sidecar, which we used in our story map, which just has information on the side with an image or a map focused on the other. Guided map tour, we've used this in the Hispanic Heritage story map. And then I think this other one's maybe something newer that I haven't used yet, but we're gonna just start from scratch. And it takes a little bit to load, but it's launching. So today, just for an example to show everyone, I am going to use something that the City of Phoenix Historic Preservation Office previously published. It's a walking tour of downtown Phoenix. So since there was already text information available and photographs, I thought that would be just a really good one to start with. I do want to point out, up here you see this help in the little purple dot. So there's what's new. Esri releases updates every month, and there's so many different features. When you first sign into your ArcGIS online account and want to open story maps, it'll take you to classic story maps, but there's like some text at the top that says, take me to the new story maps, and that's what we ended up using. So at the time we created this one, we used the new version. It didn't have all of the features of classics, but with all of these updates, they've included almost all of those features and more. So there's a lot of things you can do now with the story map. But again, we'll start off here. So we'll start with our title. We're going to do the walking tour of downtown Phoenix, and it's again, it has the title, it has this little subtitle. Let me see, I have some text here that I'll... And you just tell your story. So I'm just going to paste in some text, and maybe I want that to be a little bigger. So I'll put it as like a subheading. So it automatically makes it bold, increases the font size. And let's get started with a map. I don't have a map prepared for this, so I'm just going to go ahead and do a new express map. And we can start adding features in here. So, let that load, and I will look for a certain location. So the first building on this downtown walking tour is the Fry building, and it's located at 144 East Washington Street. So I can go ahead